Welcome to Marriage with Joy, which is the most open discussion on the internet about the positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant aspects of living in harmony with matrimony. Marriage with Joy unabashedly discusses the most interesting questions raised by listeners. Our informed and informative panel addresses issues with thought, wit, and aplomb. Voted best of the web 2 years running. Good day, beautiful, bountiful, beloved, immortal beings, and good-looking people. Maybe you're good-looking because you're always looking for and finding the good. Okay, all kinds of wonderful things happening today on the Marriage with Joy podcast. We have hurricanes. We have people trying to log in. Let me just send out a quick text, please. Log back in. Okay. Never a dull moment. Don't we? We love technology when it works. And when it doesn't work, well, it's still wonderful stuff. Okay, so we are here. We're going to welcome wonderful Lori.
Hey, Barry.
Fabulous.
How you going?
Too long since we've seen you. And
Right?
yes, Diane is just coming back in again. Okay, so we started right. There you go. Wonderful, Diane. Thank you. Okay, fabulous. So I was just announcing to people that we're going to go anyway, and I just noticed. Do you see that I became yellow for a moment and then it went away? Well,
Yes.
and I have no idea why it's doing that. This is too much fun. I hope it goes pink and then blue and then something else and a lot of fun. So I was just telling everybody around the world that we are dealing with issues. One is a hurricane in Florida, our fabulous Maura Sweeney down in the Tampa Bay area. And she said, she just texted us and said they're feeling winds that she hasn't felt since, what she said, 1983 or something like that. Some huge big storm. Let me see, what did she say? It was, yes, it's 1983. And the water is lapping up from the bay up almost to their house and all kinds of stuff. But here we are. We're going forward anyway. And today is basically the end of September in the year 2024. And
my anniversary.
Sorry?
My anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Today is your 47th anniversary? 27. 27 today?
26 today, yeah.
26 today? Okay, so first of all, there are tens and tens of thousands of people that are listening, and we're going to give a big hello and a huge bravo to wonderful Lori, the wife expert McDermott, because today is her anniversary, 26th anniversary. Now, 26 is an important word in the Hebrew language and the understanding of numbers in the world, because 26 is the essence of God. So you made it, kid. This is your God year.
Why is it the essence of God, 26? What does
I'll have to explain the whole thing. Well, the four-letter tetragrammaton name for God, there are 4 letters in it. That's what it's called, a tetragrammaton. And those 4 letters add up in the Hebrew alphabet. Every letter has a corresponding number. So as example, A would be 1, B would be 2, C would be 3, et cetera, et cetera. So when you put together the 4 letters that make up God's name, which some people in English call it Jehovah. So in Hebrew, there are specific letters that go with those that word, and they add up to 26. So it's a very mystical number that has all kinds of benefits, and it causes flow into the world, what we call shefa. There's a channel that opens up and is coming directly through you, Lori, and your husband into your children and radiating out to all the people that you and your family interact with. How do you like that?
I love it.
That's why you're there.
That. I took up some time. I'm sorry.
No, why are you sorry? And Diane is, let me see, did you say, Diane, it's year number 40 for you?
In January.
Yeah, January is going to be year number 40. Now, 40 is also a magnificent, important number in the Jewish tradition. It's the letter mem, and the letter mem is the essence of the word water, mayim, which stands for flowing, of course, because the essence of water is us. we as human beings appear to be flesh and blood. Really, what we are is water with some flesh and bones and blood. So the ability to be flowing is what the essence of a true marriage is all about. And Diane and Michael celebrating in January their 40th anniversary. And as she pointed out, my wife and I danced at their wedding 40 years ago. So how do you like that?
Love
And
it.
people, the genius is we're talking to people all over the world. I mean, there are people in Kuala Lumpur, I know for a fact, by the way, people in Bangladesh, people in Pakistan, throughout Africa and throughout India and just all over the world that are listening to this. And they love it because this process that we discuss about marriage does have a sanctity that transcends the human condition, no matter where you are in the world. It is part and parcel of what we call life. And life, and that's why the way that the title of today's podcast, as it were, is a little bit of a pun. I made it up, and the title is called To Bear or Not to Bear. It's BEAR as opposed to BARE. To bear or not to bear. And it's really, I want to have a discussion because we've had so many inquiries and emails and comments about marriage, children, childbearing, and a tremendously interesting, how should we call it, mindset that has infected the current generation of people who are of marriageable age. And we'll call marriageable age, for want of a better term, let's say 20 to 30, just to make it simple, right? There are people who still get married 18, 19, but they're very few. And there are people get married from 30 to 35, but they're fewer. Really 20 to 30, mostly in the 26 to 29, 20, 30 years old. The real issue, though, is not even marriage, even though that in itself is declining in terms of total number of people, percentage of population. What's really fascinating and disturbing from the point of view of continuing a culture called United States and freedom and liberty is that the number of people, the percentage of married people that are wanting children is declining rapidly. And the number of people that are able to have children and do have children is declining rapidly. So I'm going to tell you, I happen to be a fan of Elon Musk for a number of reasons. However, one of the things I am a fan of his is that he pointed out, whenever he's asked, that the greatest problem that exists in the world today, not just the United States, the world, is not overpopulation, which is what the issue seemed to have been for many, many years. It's depopulation. The percentage of people that are having fewer children than parents and fewer children than grandparents is dramatic. And I'll give you, first of all, I just noticed, Diane, that you're wearing a covering. Does that mean it's already fall up there and you're feeling the effects?
Yes.
Because Diane's up in the Northwest. So I'm going to go a little more with the monologue and then we'll go and have you speak and such. So just recently, I was able to make a trip to Manhattan, to New York. I shouldn't have to say New York, to Manhattan. But I did stay with my relatives on the island because if I go anywhere within 50 miles of New York and I don't stay with them, they get very upset. Okay, so I did it and I love them anyway. And it's nice to be together and such. However, it was brought to my attention that we were looking through, some photos and such, just because we always do those kind of things, right? When you're with family. So my wife comes from a family, her parents her mother was one of 9 children, and her father was one of 9 children. Now, my wife and I have 1 child. Okay, we wanted more, but that's the way life is, right? And a number of the siblings on both sides didn't have 9 children each. I think the maximum was one person had 6, and a number of them had 0. So the population, not just in numbers of people, but of people wanting to have more people, is declining. Now, still, there are 8+ billion people on the planet, so it's not as if we're going to have lack of population soon. However, if when this trend continues, you pull it out for another 2 generations, 50 more years, there is the decline is so prominent, as I think I've mentioned previously on this show, that the country of Japan, a very interesting culture, a very ancient culture, a very cohesive culture, a very, how should we say it, unified culture, will most likely be on the verge of extinction in 100 years if they don't turn their population growth around. And it doesn't look like they will. Not that there'll be no more Japanese, but the number of Japanese today, let's call it 100 million, just picking a number, might be the same in 100 years from now. And that bodes ill because people are living longer. So you have a very tiny population to support a very large elder population. It's a difficulty psychologically, spiritually, and economically. Okay, so now we go back to our discussion today: to bear or not to bear. That is the question. Again, with respect to Shakespeare and Hamlet and such. Lori is blessed with 3 children. No grandchildren yet, but hopefully sometime. Oh, maybe she does have. We don't know.
No. I'd like them, but no one's ready.
Right. Diane has children and grandchildren. I'm blessed to say we have 1 son, but we have 2 grandsons and such. So the process continues. So each one of us, and Maura has 1 child, no grandchildren yet. Each of us is dedicated to the conception that generations are an important part of life. I think that's a fair statement, right? So I sent out something just recently, I think earlier today. There was a big discussion in the Wall Street Journal about this idea of abortion as a political statement in the upcoming election, and whether the Democratic contender or the Republican one is more moderated and such. Leave aside the aspects of politics. However, there were a lot of letters that were generated about the idea of giving birth. And there was one that was extremely disturbing to me and hundreds of other readers of the Wall Street Journal, because in quotation marks, it mentioned the following words that one letter writer wrote regarding the abortion discussion, that it happened to be a male. He wrote that no individual right to, in quotation marks now, in quotation, what the letter writer wrote, there's no individual right to enslave a mother to the needs of a fetus, close quotes. And therefore, one of the great responses from another letter writer was telling about 4 attempts to have children that didn't work. She miscarried, and then finally able to give birth to 3 children. And she found it repugnant to equate the word enslave with pregnancy. And it does. It's a dagger to the heart. Now, again, let's be blunt. I'm a man. Some people have trouble defining what a woman is, but nobody's asking what's a man. I'm a man. I'm not giving birth. Men can't give birth. I'm making a categorical statement, maybe politically incorrect. I'm making a categorical statement. Men can't give birth. I'm asking my dearly beloved friends and panel here, when you hear these words of enslave a mother to the needs of a fetus, does it ring at any way true? Can you even understand how a letter writer could write such a thing? And what does that mean in terms of a mentality for propagating the species, as it were? So, of course, we lead off with our wonderful, amazing Dr. Diane Medved from way up north in the Seattle area, and she's experiencing the autumn season. So I hope it's quite beautiful there, Diane, and not too cold.
I'm looking out the window. Yes, things are starting to change colors around here. So it is beautiful. The answer to your question would be it's complicated. Clearly, the person who wrote it doesn't have children.
Yes.
Well,
because there's, and probably as a man,
yes,
because first of all, mothers have hormones that make them innately receptive to their own babies. And they bond with their babies during gestation when they're pregnant. So there's a relationship there. It isn't just an abstract concept. Having a child is a person inside you. And you have plenty of months, 9 to be specific, in which to realize the ramifications of that. Yes, you are responsible for that child. Are you enslaved to that child? Well, certainly sometimes you feel that way. I mean, sometimes you feel that, how can I keep going on? This kid is crying. I don't know what to give him. I don't know what's happening. I mean, yes, at times you feel enslaved, just as at times you feel enslaved to your job or to your partner or to anything in life that is a certainty that you have to come through with. You can feel enslaved, but does that mean that that is the appropriate overall term to describe the whole thing? No, the whole thing is complicated because it's a relationship, and a relationship depends on two people. One is the child, who is miraculously growing in a way that you can never anticipate and is always surprising, and if you're open to it, is always joyful. On the other hand, you have yourself as part of that relationship, and sometimes you're angry and crabby, and you think that child is enslaving you, and maybe you're not the best partner in that relationship either. So I think the term enslaving is very disrespectful to people like the return letter writer who lost 4 babies to miscarriage. It's insensitive and it's uncaring and it's disrespectful. Is it accurate? No, it's not accurate for an overall term, because the reward is not just in you, but it's in perpetuity. It's your legacy. This person is who will carry on your values, ideally, after you're gone. And that doesn't mean much when you're 20 and you're pregnant and you didn't expect to be. But at the same time, it means a lot more as you grow with that person, as that person becomes an individual, and as you get older and realize there is a finite end to you on this planet. And that is scary. But when you have children, you have something that will go beyond you. And so I think the letter writer was in the moment, in that person's head, and maybe even later regretted it. I'll give that person the benefit of the doubt. But I mean, it's not something to get upset about. If somebody says that parents are enslaved, all you have to worry about is your own behavior. And if you love your children and then you love your spouse and you give all that you can give, I mean, I think that's pretty much, am I frozen? I think that's pretty much all you can expect. I look frozen to me in the picture there. I'm back.
Right. Well, I heard that was a famous movie, actually. So you're.
It was, and I panned it, and I got severely chastised for that.
I don't even know it existed. So I want to unpack a few things you said here, Diane, because I think they're noteworthy. The relationship hormonally of a mother to a child. Of course, I said, as a man, I can't feel it. I can begin to want to feel it and love it because it's our life. It's that perpetuation of life, of the love that we share with each other. It's really quite astounding. And as you said, it revolves around this beautiful relationship that people have with one another. And that's beyond the description of the human condition. I mean, one might never know unless you've been taught about it, that 2 people can come together, again, in this case, a man and a woman, and create new life. That is truly miraculous. So the letter writer is guilty. It happens to be, it's a man. The letter writer is guilty of being insensitive, disrespectful. I would say even to the point of purposefulness. Why do I say that? Because I've read dozens and dozens of comments that went back and forth, and the letter writer himself, again revealing he's a man, uh, never recanted and didn't say, poor choice of words, which anybody can say, okay, I made a mistake, right? It's the season for admitting mistakes. Didn't do that. So when people get in, and the part of that I found also very fascinating is that saying that somebody is enslaved to the needs of a fetus. I mean, people have difficulty calling it a baby.
Well, that's a case of he doth protest too much. I mean,
Yeah.
it's clear that there's something inside him that is angry. As a psychologist, I mean, I see that anger is right there. And I mean, I can't say anything about who this person is. I don't know anything at all, but I can see that there is some anger that's being projected by using that term, because maybe that person's own mother taught him that he was her enslaver.
Mhm.
And maybe he's angry about that. And why should anybody do that to anyone? And he's got conflicting feelings. Who knows what's going on? But the words say as much about the writer as they do about the subject.
Yes, and the better news for me is that it prompted so many people to come out and not necessarily attack the writer, but to say how compassionate they were to each other and saying, we don't agree with this at all. And as you pointed out, okay, the term enslaved, by the way, it's I'll call it a cherry bomb into gasoline. I mean, it's purposely done because the mentality in our country today, unfortunately, I'm making the statement, bold statement, tarring and feathering a lot of people, that there is this slavery mentality vis-a-vis the government, bigger government, slavery mentality towards, well, we enslaved people, the history of America and the negative. So anytime you're using negative terms to describe something about America and one of our most important institutions, let's be blunt, marriage and children are one of the most important aspects of the American experience. Everything else is sort of beside the point, the economics aside, the politics aside. But, sorry?
It's the most important thing in all experience.
Yes, I mean it really is. It would. Thank God, married 47 years. I can't imagine not being married to my mother, to my wife. It's quite well. My mother and my wife actually are very different. I married my father. That's a whole other discussion. my wife, my father are very similar. However, the relationship of husband and wife, or whatever the two people are that love each other, literally till death do you part, is so profound that to in any way give it a negative connotation, such as slavery, shackled, bound, etc., it belies the whole process. So I would like to go and ask wonderful Lori to speak. And I'm asking Lori to speak for several reasons. Number one, because we love her. Number two is because she's the wife expert. She is dealing with people, mostly women, who are going through very difficult situations in their marriage, mostly to the point of disintegrating. And she's just told us all that she's celebrating her 26th anniversary, and she's been through stuff. So I'd like you, Lori, if you'd be able to, again, speak to this quote that a woman a mother is enslaved to the needs of a fetus. How does that sit with you?
Well, they're not like you can go out partying every night once you have a baby. I agree with Diane that it's nasty. That was wrong. You can tell he's a man and he's been bittered by something. And it could have been maybe he had a girlfriend who couldn't go out with him because she had kids or had to go home. And people do that today. Like, I got to leave dinner early because my dog needs to go potty. And they leave dinner early. So it's like you have the same thing with the dog, right? And to be honest with you, when we got our dog, my youngest was like 6. And I was like, I don't want a dog because if I have a dog, that thing's going to follow me all over the house for the rest of my life. And that's it. Like, he's right here, right? I will never be alone again. So am I enslaved to him?
And that was a very good point. I love that, by the way. It's a whole different viewpoint
Yeah.
from that's how people have pets, that
Yeah.
they don't want to be alone.
Yeah.
But,
Oh, yeah. Well, he just walks around, stares at me. I'm on the toilet. He stares at me, waiting for me. I'm like, what are you waiting for? It gets just weird. It's like he's already been fed. He's already been taken care of. Kids don't do that. They get fed, they wander. I grew up in a neighborhood where, every family had like 10 kids. And, the more
wait a minute,
kids
I
you
just
had,
interject. Lori grew up Catholic in Chicago.
Irish. Yeah, Irish Catholic.
Right.
But everyone had like a bazillion kids. And it seemed like, the people that had 2 kids or 3 kids, there was just a lot of chaos in the way that there was more things that had to be taken care of. Like, you had to be entertained more. You had to go places more. Where if you have 10 kids, you open the backyard door, out you go. And they all play together. It's like an instant party everywhere you go. There's not a lot you have to do with that many kids except feed them, bathe them, and get them clothing, right? And then the love part just happens. And I like that. I've always liked that. I always wanted that. So going back to your question, is it slavery? No, I don't think so. But I do think it's a serious commitment. And I think the busier people are, like today, I'll be at a park, walking by with my dog who won't leave me alone. And I'll see people, mothers, on their phone and their kids over there. And I saw a video on Instagram where this kid, they did it twice. And the video was the dad was on the phone and the kid came in. It was like trying to get his dad's attention and then just walked away. Where the other one, the dad didn't have his phone. He looked right at his kid. The kid came in and they hugged each other. And I thought that was really powerful. And I believe today most parents go, here's your iPad, so they can go, oh, I can text my girlfriends. I can text something. I can work. And I think we're losing the connection to that slavery anyway. Back when I had kids, I enjoyed waking up saying, what are we going to do today? Let's go to the museum. Let's go have an adventure. And we were forced to do that. And today we don't do that anymore, or those people don't. But I have vowed myself when I'm a grandma, I'll be the one that takes away the electronics and says, let's go to the park. Let's go do something so you can stay engaged with them. But I don't want to be the grandma that watches those kids 24/7. I just don't. I want to take them for a little while. Here you go. I'm not. Right. I don't want to do that again. I did it. It was wonderful. And I think we as a society need to really honor and love the people that made a commitment to raise a family, because we need those people. Before we know it, we're not going to have any of them.
Well, on that high note, I'm going to tell you something wonderful, Lori. You opened my eyes to something that I didn't realize until you said it, even though I know it intellectually. So I am a very big fan these days of a man named Jonathan Haidt, although he doesn't like being called Haidt. His name is spelled Haidt. He likes to be called Jonathan Haidt, but it's Haidt. He wrote the book. The title is escaping me at the moment, and I promote it whenever I can.
Sounds familiar.
The Anxious Child. Something
the
like
ancient child, yeah, so, yeah.
Child.
The ancient generation, yes.
Yeah,
So, and what he proposes in the book is, thank God, being adopted by school systems throughout the United States of America. LA County was the first to adopt this, which is no cell phones in school, on school property during school session. 0. Put them in a bag, lock them up. That's it. Now, is it being implemented? Well, it was voted on to do it. It's being implemented in a number of schools throughout Los Angeles County. It just got passed in New York Schools District and many of the school districts around the country, because people are recognizing that there is slavery. This is what you said that woke me up. And I think that goes to the point of the letter writer. And I think you hit it also, wonderful, Diane. There's an anger. What's the anger? I'm enslaved to my phone.
Right.
When people recognize that there is, but I don't want to admit it. See, I do it because I'm texting, I'm working, I'm helping. you see people, and I make fun of this because I can't walk very well, as you both know. So I walk very funny and such. I have to walk slow. And sometimes people bump into me, or I bump into people purposely, and they're walking with the phone in front of them. But they're walking with the ear, especially younger people, but they're walking with the earbuds and with the phone in front of them. And so they don't see that they're walking into something.
Oh my God. Did you see the video? It was on Instagram. The video of a woman, she was texting. She fell into a manhole.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know if she made it. It was like one of those cameras that were like on a building. She was walking and she fell straight in. I'm like, I will never look down when I walk again.
Okay, so there is an enslavement in our
down on the ground.
Yes.
I'll never look at my phone again. I will look down.
Right. There is a slave mentality in the freest country in the world. I mean, to be blunt, there is no more free country in terms of license to do almost anything you want than in America. And yet there is an enslavement to, I don't even want to call it technology, the phone. And it's not a phone, by the way. It's a communication device. Do we make phone calls? Yes, but what do people do? They watch videos, texts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the reasons I don't, and I can say, is because I physically can't. I can't walk and chew gum at the same time, essentially, because of my situation. So I'm saved from that. And yet, when I get in the car, since I'm a passenger, I'm not driving. I have a driver, thank God. So I do it. So I see we are enslaved. So I think that there's something in the letter writer, when to use this term, it wasn't so far-fetched. It was an admission on some level that we, all of us, now you want to put it in terms of to a mother to a child, I don't want to call it fetus. And as you pointed out, Diane, there's a hormonal aspect to this that just, you can't overlook that. That's an essential part of the human condition. And the human condition is both spiritual as well as physical and psychological, right? All three aspects. And I want to just make a certain segue into the other piece that I sent you both, which was about a man named Samuel Jackson. Now, I know I know him because he's a famous man, and he's an actor. If you ask me what he did, I can't tell you. I'm sure Diane and Lori. I don't know, but he's a famous person. And he wrote that he's married 44 years of marriage. And he writes that the essence for him for marriage, and I think it's quite true, is tolerance. Because he writes, everyone has flaws. Hello. The key to marriage is never give up. Just, it's not an option. Now, I know, Diane, we're going to plug the book. One of her many books, by the way, the Case Against Divorce, right?
That was a while ago. Now it's Don't Divorce.
Don't divorce. Don't divorce. Made it shorter.
Yeah, but the Case Against Divorce is freaking awesome.
And by the way, just as a nice aside, Lori read that book before we even began this podcast. She knew the book. So, I mean, you see the generating the vibes that work for everybody's benefit. And by the way, it's one of the reasons people love watching us and listening to us, because this is all real. This is authentic people talking about authentic stuff. So, and I think, Diane, you mentioned last time you were even going to write a new book saying, okay, go ahead, get divorced, because the tensions of maintaining marriage, recognizing that the scales fall before the eyes, and you're dealing with another human being. And by definition, recognize in oneself that you have flaws. Oh, no, me? Yes. And that the other person can even see them. Because again, when you get comfortable enough in your own skin and with somebody else, you really actually welcome that opportunity for somebody to say, you know something, jerk, without saying jerk, you know something, that was insensitive, that was incorrect. What a benefit that somebody that I trust and care about can say to me, well, you could do better. That was not that. You can't buy that. It's just not possible. The place where it happens is in marriage, right? Am I correct on that, Diane? So I'd
If
like
you're
to
open to it. And there are so many stubborn people. I find that stubbornness is one of the most pervasive character flaws. I'll say it's a flaw. It's not a trait, it's a flaw. To be stubborn means you're not open to correction. To be stubborn means that you're going to stick with something. My mom had a saying, to cut off your nose to spite your face. But even if you may want the end, you're willing for your stubbornness to not get it because you're going to be stubborn, because you've got to do it your way, because you're going to be right. And I think, Barry, what you're saying is very true, that it's a joy and a gift to be receiving correction from someone who you know is on your team and loves you. But the key is to be willing to receive it, to realize that person is on your team, and to welcome that person as part of you and not an other who is criticizing you.
So, first of all, thank you. Stubbornness is a character flaw. And when you recognize it, or it becomes available to you to be recognized, you can correct it. And if you can correct it, guess what happens? Your life becomes better. Let's think of, I'll mention something. I happen to have known and helped a heroin addict when I was much younger.
Wow.
And if you ever have been around a heroin addict, it's a very difficult situation. This particular person actually was able to save himself and get off the stuff, but he taught me some great lessons. One of them is, it's called horse. And okay, why am I mentioning that? Only because I found it fascinating. But it's called a monkey on your back. So we all know about that idea of having a burden, and that monkey just doesn't go away. In other words, a rock you can sort of pick up and put down. The reason they call it the monkey is because no matter whenever you try to do it, it just moves around and stays there. It is stubborn. That's what he said to me. It's stubborn. It can't go away unless you have it go away. When you recognize that stubbornness is not outside of you, but in you, guess what happens? I'm telling you, he told this to me. I was 19, so that's 50, almost 60 years ago. He said once he was able to admit that, it went away. It was gone. And I don't know if you know this stuff. You can kick a heroin habit addiction easier than you can alcohol or tobacco.
I don't want to find out.
No, you don't want to know these things. I'm mentioning only because I can still visualize what he said to me and what he taught me. It helped me because we're all stubborn to an extent. Let's be blunt. So to recognize and be able to, once you admit it and you articulate it, it goes away. What a gift. As you said, that's the gift of marriage. Mm-hmm. That's the joy. The journey of you.
Goes away. Just kidding.
Yes, go ahead. Lori.
No, I was like, you said, once you admit it, it goes away. So once I admit that I'm married, it goes away. It was a joke. It was a joke. It's too late.
So for you, Lori, you're dealing with mostly women in difficult situations. Mm-hmm. They're either in divorce, getting divorced, or about to be divorced, and they're not happy about it. Mm-hmm. Do they recognize that there's a character flaw that they can be correcting for themselves, or is it woe is me, victim?
Oh, they all start at woe is me. Why? Why is this happening to me? Why did this happen? Why do I have to go to all this trouble to become a better person when he's out sleeping with another lady? Why is this on me if I want my marriage back together? And the answer is, well, he's over there and you're here. But the gift that happens, I was actually in a little ride with a friend of mine whose husband did this, and he's not home yet. But I said to her, because she's learning so much about who she is and how to commit to something and loving someone who's unlovable because he's doing horrific things. But you can have unconditional love for someone, even though they wander that way, because we do that to our kids. You can have a child that murders someone and you still love them. That's unconditional love. We have it for our kids, but we forget to have it to our spouses. And so just when you go through something like that, you learn really what it means to love someone. And then you get all these other benefits and skills that you wouldn't have had if you didn't go through this freaking hell of a S show. And it's been a very interesting journey for me, but I love watching people go from, how could he do this to me, to, all right, I'm becoming a better person. I just took 33 girls down to Orlando for a retreat. And, everyone thinks we're going to sit inside this room and cry for 4 days. But my goal is get you there, you cry, we do sessions, and then we go bungee jumping. And then we go down the river rafting slide. And then we go to dinner and I hire a photographer and you got to look pretty because I get your picture taken. And it was so nice. And no one wanted to do the stuff outside the room. Just stay here and cry. No, we're going to stop this. We're going to go have fun. So that was cool too, because you realize I could be sad and cry for 10 minutes and be really depressed, but now I have to go laugh. Okay, excuse me a minute. And I forced people to laugh in a way because they were all together and laughter is contagious, and I had them tightly in spaces. So it was a really cool thing. But like old people say, you're over 50, you can't change. You can't change an old dog, new tricks. And yeah, you can, but that person has to want to change. And that's what I do.
So you were able to attract 33 women to a retreat. Mm-hmm. That's a large number.
2 hunks. Yeah, 1 hunk and 1 hunk. 4 days, 3 nights, 4 days, 3 nights. Yeah.
That's a lot of people. That's a lot of stuff happening.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I'll make mention, and I think Diane would like to speak also about it. So today's date is September 26, 2024. And it is just 1 week away from the most interesting, I'm using that term, most interesting of all the Jewish events in the course of a year. It's called the head of the year. The people call it the New Year. It's called Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year. And it takes place at this time, the vernal equinox, purposely because it's a change of season, it's a transition, and it's a time of introspection. It's a time of being at one and the same time, like your retreat, Lori. It's a retreat. It's centered on the individual, and it's done in a congregation. Sometimes congregations are small, sometimes they're very large. Could be 1,000 people there. And yet you're by yourself, in the sense that what you want to do is to look at oneself and examine oneself. And been going through that process, some of us go through for 30 days prior, some people do it a week prior. But the point is that it is a process to look at oneself and find those 1 or 2, 3 items that you really want to work on in one's own self, in one's relationship with your dearest, most beloved people, and in a congregational setting. So use the example of the church. It's for yourself, your husband, and the kids, and then the members of your church. And this is universal for Jewish people all over the world, wherever they will be. They'll be in China, Japan, Uganda, and Israel, and all over America, everywhere. Every Jewish person goes through this at this time of the year. And it is, to use a psychological term, a cathartic experience. So I'm going to ask Diane to speak on that. Is that true, what I just said, Diane?
Yes, I think it's true. And also, it's not this year, Jewish people prepare for a month in advance. And every day in that month before Rosh Hashanah, we hear the shofar, which is the call to attention, the reminder, hey, this is your chance. This is the time of year. This is when we're supposed to be doing this. And in thinking about this, it occurs to me that this year, it's not just myself, which it always starts with yourself. And you have to look at all the flaws that you'd like to correct. And it's not just my family and I care so much about them, and I want to improve myself for them. And it's not just my congregation, who I also love dearly. We have a wonderful rabbi and our friends who come for Shabbat every week. This year, God is calling us to look at the Jewish people, who last year began a war where they were not the aggressors. But in Jewish tradition, we believe that the source of what God does is our own behavior. And so we have to look at not only ourselves for this Rosh Hashanah, which I'm so used to doing every year. I try to look at myself. But I think God called us to look at the Jewish people and see how we as a people are relating to God and are relating to other people on this earth, and how we're caring for our neighbors, and how some Jews are different from other Jews, and they're not together united the way that we're supposed to be. And I think that's an even broader perspective on what is happening and what we're called to do this particular Rosh Hashanah.
Right. There is, let's be blunt, war is raging in the world. And war is an extension of the human condition when it's out of balance. We know that dis-ease is exactly what that is, right? Dis-ease. When someone's at ease and the body's flowing, everything is fine. Dis-ease says that the body is attacking itself. That's what cancer is. Cancer essentially is some cells saying, we're out here and we're declaring war. And the way to combat that, many different methodologies, of course, drugs, I mean, good drugs, not talking about heroin, medicinal ways, psychological ways, spiritual ways. And that's why I bring up this particular date, this session of our Marriage with Joy, because marriage is the sanctity of two people. It extends to the family, and it extends to the community, and it extends to a nation. The United States of America is founded on ideals that are preserved in our documents that relate specifically to the uniqueness of the human condition, which is that we are flawed. And at the same moment, we can recognize and repair that. And we're all urged to work one to another to repair that. And again, I'm touting it and saying marriage is the most wonderful place to do that. You can't buy this stuff. You can't find this. With great respect, you go to a psychologist, psychiatrist, and you discuss, and the person helps you and gives you their information. It doesn't compare to the possibility of having that happen within a family structure, whether it's just one-to-one, husband and wife, with the family. I mean, the ability to sit around a dinner table and have 5 completely disparate beings, in your case, Lori, right? Husband, wife, and 3 kids, all discussing potentially the same thing and having 5 completely different experiences and ideas.
It's not
and
easy.
not discounting one to the other, saying, well, that's crazy. It can't be true. It's not. Okay, sometimes you can say those things, but really the issue is how you deal with that in a setting that's going to really be of benefit, because that's truly what our podcast is about, what Marriage with Joy is about, is how does one bring benefit to oneself, the most close relationship you have with your spouse, and to the world. And especially, as you pointed out so nicely, Diane, to the Creator. I mean, we are God-believing people, right? There are a number of people listening who can say, oh, stop that God stuff. Okay, we'll stop. It's up to you, whether you believe or not. There is a mechanism in the world that everybody recognizes beyond oneself, whatever name you want to ascribe to it. And the ability to live in harmony with oneself and with other people, and especially with progeny. Imagine, Lori, the 3 people you gave birth to are all different than you. And you say, how did that ever happen? Who are these beings? I never taught what I did. Or, wow, look at that. They're actually believing what I believe, and how cool is that?
Yeah, it's when it starts when they're first little and they're like so easy, and people are like, "Oh my God, babies are so hard." I'm like, wait till they start talking and have an opinion. Oh my God. That's when it's really tough.
Again, the genius of the process called marriage. And as we began the show, and I don't want to end on a dystopian note, is that the process of marriage as a place to be, as a goal, is in the mentality of a lot of people in America is declining. The ability to want children, let alone raise them as such, is declining. And part of it has to do with economics. It is truly a pity. I mean, a pity. It hurts that people can look and say, well, the cost of having children is da 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 da, as opposed to the cost of not having children is.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I wrote a book on this. It was called Children to Have or Have Not. And one of the conclusions that I came to after working with hundreds and hundreds of families through UCLA Extension was the idea that one can imagine the costs, but one cannot imagine the benefits because
Very
it's
good.
dependent on who that child is. And you don't know who that child is yet. And you can't imagine the feelings that would be created in this relationship when there's no relationship to be had yet. And so it's very easy to say, I don't want to have kids because all you can see is the negative. You can't see the positive in advance. The
Until
only
it's too
way-
late. Until it's too late. And
in
then you
some
can't have
cases-
kids.
In some cases, but those of us who treasure our kids and our grandchildren, I just don't want that moment to leave. I take a zillion pictures because I want to capture every moment. And my kids want to pose and they all want to be because we want to capture that moment. We talk about what pictures do, how they can help us remind ourselves of being there and experiencing this again together. And so you're right that often for many people it's too late and they look back and go, why didn't I have a child? But
Can I say something about that real quick? That is something I talk to people a lot, because it's like I talk to people and they're like, I just want to have one more child, but my wife doesn't want to have one. And it's like, well, nobody ever regrets. God, we shouldn't have had that last kid. Maybe we should have returned him, right? Nobody ever says that. So it's like, if you're not going to regret it once it's here, no one ever regrets their kid. That third kid is always a blessing, or that fourth kid's always a blessing. The second kid's always, no one ever says, shoot. But yeah, so keep going, Diane. And that's what it is. It's like, if you're not going to regret it and you want one more and you're not sure, freaking have the kid. We need them.
Yes.
Well, you hear that?
I will say I did have a client who unfortunately had 3 kids, had that extra kid, and that kid went to jail. It was bad, and the attention that kid required took all the joy from all the other people in the family. And I know it was so sad, but I only heard that one time, and every other time it was like, but now I know this person and I love this person and I treasure this person. So for every one sad case that you hear, and my heart goes out to that kind of case and that person. I cried with her. But at the same time, there's 1,000 cases where everybody says, I'm so happy I had more kids. I wish I could have even more. Then where it goes wrong.
So we're ending on a high note because the ability to want children is a very positive force in the world, even if one doesn't merit to have children. Wanting to have children says, I believe in the future. Not wanting to have children says, I don't believe this is a future. Again, not to be dystopian, I will say that there's a movement amongst younger people, mostly 18 to 23, 24, who are convinced, because they've been taught, that global catastrophe is about to be visited upon the planet. And why should I bring a child or children into a world that is doomed? So this idea of negativity is infecting people to the point where they can't even begin to want to experience this positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant atmosphere that you've been talking about. And that's, again, one of the reasons people love this podcast. And there's thousands of them around the world, is because this is marriage with joy. The experience of joy, the ode to joy. The word hallelujah talks about praising God, because that's what joy is. And one of the best ways to do that is to experience marriage, experience family, if you can have one, and to relish that, and to understand that that is an affirmation of continuity, because everybody recognizes that humans have been around for a while. We want them to continue, and we want to be the best humans possible. And the best way to do that is making sure that you have somebody that can say to you, hey, sure, that was not the best thing to do. And say, oh, thank you, honey, which I don't do all the time. However, I do. When I didn't even recognize, I did something the other day. And again, I'm married 47 years, and I didn't even remember. And she gently told me, I said, oh, okay, thank you. So on this high note, I want to say, again, a huge thank you to you, wonderful Diane, and you, fabulous Lori, and you, amazing Maura, who is hopefully with her husband battening down the hatches and experiencing a hurricane down in southern Florida, and that it won't be anything more than just high winds and losing power for a little bit and such like that. But such is life, and that the turbulence and the genius of what we do in marriage with joy is truly extraordinary. And I say thank you so much. And God willing, we'll meet again next month with another wonderful subject. And we'll get, I'm sure, thousands of people asking, hey, what about this? What about that? And how come they're going to ask, how come Lori doesn't have a dog? And we'll go and continue.
I have a dog and a kid who was supposed to sell 15 pumpkins, but I was keeps walking in here asking me questions. I'm like, it's on the paper.
Okay, so on that high note, again, a blessing coming from Diane and from Lori and from Maura and from Barry is go forth, live exuberantly, spread the seeds of joy, happiness, peace, and love. Go mad. Go make a difference. Bye, everybody. Welcome to Marriage with Joy, which is the most open discussion on the internet about the positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant aspects of living in harmony with matrimony. Marriage with Joy unabashedly discusses the most interesting questions raised by listeners. Our informed and informative panel addresses issues with thought, wit, and aplomb. Voted best of the web 2 years running.